Hi, I'm Caleb, and you're listening to the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcast.
Welcome to the University of Chicago Public Policy Podcasts. My name is Siddhant Wadera, and I am the production manager for The Main Page, our podcast on policy, politics, and current affairs. For today's episode, Jack Emery discussed blockchain voting with Nimit Sawhney. A quick note before we begin. This episode was recorded remotely due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Without further ado, here is Nimit Sawhney.
Today, we're going to be discussing the potential that blockchain technology and internet voting have in election systems. We are joined by Nimit Sawhney, co-founder and CEO of Voatz, and that's spelled V-O-A-T-Z. Voatz is on the forefront of implementing the newest technology in order to make mobile voting a reality. The company was founded in 2015, was part of the 2017 Boston Techstars Accelerator Program, and is really the foremost leader in this movement towards mobile voting at this time. So, Nimit, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jack, for having me here.
Absolutely. So why don't we just start off for potentially the less technology savvy listeners out there, and just at a high level explain what blockchain technology is and why it has this specific application to voting systems, in your opinion.
So to put it very simply, think of the blockchain as this really distributed Excel sheet where anything you write in one cell is mathematically linked to what comes before it and what comes after it. And that aspect and the fact that it's distributed, which means no single entity, no single person controls it, adds that element of resilience and tamper resistance. So you can't tamper with data once it's written. You can't, overwrite data once it's written. And then there's no single point of failure. So there's no one thing you have to, potentially attack and bring down the whole network. So in a very simplistic way, those are kind of the really important properties of the blockchain. And the reason it has become so popular in some sense and gains a lot of attention is because it's this unique kind of coming together of computer science, particularly cryptography, and in a way behavioral economics, where you've kind of created an incentive for people to be honest, or to put it in a different way, you've removed a lot of the incentive for people to be dishonest. And so you put that all together, creates a potentially very powerful scenario for protecting any form of data. And voting data, transaction data, financial data are some of the really critical places where this technology could be really, really useful.
Awesome. So bring us back to 2015, which was a time shortly before Bitcoin exploded and blockchain really broke onto the scene, the mainstream scene where everyday people, while they may not understand blockchain today, at least have heard the term and understand that it's sort of this futuristic technology, or at least high potential technology. So bring us back to 2015. To that time, and tell us about the journey of founding Voatz and what was the vision for the company at that time?
Yeah, our origins were pretty much accidental. So my brother and I were at a hackathon way back in 2014 at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas. And the theme of the hackathon was Hack to the Future. What's the one thing you would do in the future and how would you do it? And what really intrigued us was, besides the prize money and the swag and the free food you get at the hackathons, was one Bitcoin. So this is 2014 pre-hype. We hadn't yet dived into Bitcoin or what really it could potentially do. So we literally downloaded the paper the morning of, read it, and had to read it a couple of times to digest it fully. And what really excited us was this capability a system like that could have to secure data. And some incidents from kind of childhood kicked in. We had grown up in India and seen some unfortunate incidents around voter coercion. And so that kind of came together at that very opportune moment. And we figured, well, we could potentially design a system here which solves that problem. And so we kind of went audacious. We said we'll use smartphones, biometrics, the ability to ID proof people in real time, have them scan IDs, and we'll use the blockchain to store all the voter data, and maybe this can solve a lot of the problems. And so we prototyped that, pitched, and ended up winning that competition to our complete surprise. So that led to a series of events, and I had previously been working in the mobile space, worked a lot on the security space as well. And so we brought that knowledge. We didn't know much about elections, so kind of dived in, and 2015 is when we formally started. And since then, come a long way, but still a lot to do.
So we'll get into a little bit more about what's happened since, but 2015 it's founded. Flash forward 2 years, the company gets accepted to Techstars Boston, which Techstars is one of the most well-known startup accelerators in the country. So tell us a little bit about what that experience meant for you personally and also for Voatz as a company.
It was an awesome experience. I think prior to getting into Techstars, so we had just kind of dipped our waters in the Boston startup ecosystem in 2015. When we first started, we started attending a lot of the events, trying to talk to people, getting advice. And it became very clear that there was a lot of information there was a lot of help, but it wasn't structured in a way which could, benefit people who are starting, what we call as first-time founders or starting a company of your own for the first time. And so I think joining an accelerator gives you that structure, gives you that access to that network, to advisors, experts, and eventually also investors. And so that's the real value add. And for us, the program was a complete game changer. We literally got the call that we were selected the day after election day in 2016 in November. So it was quite a moment. And the program started soon thereafter, early 2017. So it was very intense. A lot of meetings with a lot of new people, a lot of advice, a lot of things to fathom and sink in. But we loved it. It was an amazing experience. It's a life-changing experience. Yeah.
My understanding from the outside is that people come in or startups come in to Techstars with these revolutionary ideas. And a lot of times those ideas going in are not necessarily the same ideas that come out. So through that program, were there any fundamental elements of your vision or the Voatz vision in general that changed?
In our case, not so much. What we really learned was what's really needed to build a company around the idea. Everything from financials and having a proper model to what's necessary on the technology side from a usability perspective, end user perspective, because our focus was very much on security because we come from a cybersecurity background. So the first iteration of our product was really, really hard to use. So actually it was in the Techstars program, we met a usability expert and she helped us understand how can you, because you can have the most secure product and nobody can use it, and what's the point of it, right? So that was a really good experience. And then I would say, learning how to pitch to investors, getting, which is always one of the hardest things when you're, starting a new company. So those were, really kind of the key things for us. There were other companies in our class who changed and pivoted significantly. But in our case, I think we kind of stuck to the idea, refined it, but we didn't deviate much from our original vision. Yeah.
So we will certainly get into the West Virginia engagement here in a minute, but between 2015 and federal West Virginia midterms, what was the growth of the actual projects and engagements like over that time?
Yeah, it was very slow in the beginning. So we didn't have a fully ready beta version in 2015. We were still learning, particularly the election space, because we knew about the security, we knew about the tech side of it, but how do we really bring that together with what's needed from a legal perspective, from a rules perspective. So it was a lot of learning on the ground, and it was only towards the early part of 2016 that we had something usable. So we started kind of testing the waters. We got lucky in the summer when we found our first paying client through one of our advisors. She connected us to the state Democratic Party here in Massachusetts. They have annual conventions, and they were looking for a system. And so we kind of got our, trial by fire, and fortunately everything worked. So that was our first real event using the system. And then we started then pursuing universities, nonprofits. We also started to work with the state Republican Party as well, just to have, we have both sides, because we don't want to be partisan as an elections platform. And so that was the first, so we continued that in the remainder of 2016 and all of 2017 as well. And it was important to do that because for something as critical as election technology, you don't want to, you shouldn't be using it in a government election as the first kind of test case, right? So by the time we got to West Virginia, we had done 32 small elections already. So we felt really good about the platform. We felt good about the security. Felt good that, at that stage, thousands of people could use it, and, it could serve the sort of the basic purpose it was intended to do. And so that was essential, that taking those baby steps, which helped us get to a stage. So it took almost, say 3 years, starting from, original drawing board to get to a place where you can actually test it out with a government client.
So as we've sort of hinted at up to this point, that all leads up to this U.S. federal midterm election in West Virginia in 2018, which I assume was probably the biggest milestone of the company so far. Is that fair to say?
At that moment, yes, it was the first ever smartphone app-based system, blockchain-based system to ever be used in a government election anywhere. So yeah, that was very significant, pioneering, humbling moment for us. And then we continued that in 2019 with Denver. We became the first system to be used in a U.S. municipal election. And then last year with Utah County, the first system ever to be used in a presidential election. Yeah, but you're right. That was kind of the pivotal moment. Yeah.
So let's go back to that project, the West Virginia midterms. Tell us about what it was like to be behind the scenes running the operations of this, really make or break moment for the company. And additionally, beyond Voatz, what did this mean for the